"You're not invited this year." That was all my mother said. No beating around the bush, no explanation, no emotion. Then she added one more line like a final stab. "We all agreed you shouldn't come." I stayed silent for a few seconds, then laughed. "We?" As in the people I've been paying the mortgage for over the past 4 years. If they see me as an outsider, then I'll stop pretending I'm part of the family. It's about time I hit cancel payment on my banking app. My name is Jessica Clark, 36 years old, living in Portland, Oregon. I'm a financial advisor for a growing startup. I make a decent income, enough to live comfortably, and enough to cover the mortgage for the house my mom and brother have been living in for nearly 5 years. Everything started when my dad died in a car accident. I was 30 then, my younger brother Nathan was just 24 with no stable job. My mom, Teresa, completely fell apart, unable to manage either emotionally or financially. I was the one who stepped up, handled the funeral, paperwork, and saved the house from foreclosure. Since mom couldn't afford it, I took out a new mortgage under my name to keep the house my dad left behind. Mom and Nathan continued living there, while I rented a small apartment near downtown, about a 25-minute drive away. I never kept score. I did it because I thought at the very least we still had each other. I believed in family, in staying connected, until they started treating me like an ATM. I was covering nearly 90% of the monthly cost of the house, including property taxes and insurance. But not once did I hear the words, "Thank you." Instead, every time I visited, my mom would throw passive-aggressive comments. "You're always so busy, never make time for family. Working in finance sounds fancy, huh? Still not married though." Nathan did nothing but play video games and rotate through girlfriends. Anytime I brought it up, Mom would say I was being too harsh and didn't understand his situation. I tried not to let it bother me. I told myself, they're grieving, they need time. But year after year, nothing changed, except I kept getting pushed further away. The first week of last December, I called my mom to ask about Christmas plans. I thought it'd be like every other year. I'd come over on the 24th, bring wine, gifts, and some cookies I baked myself. But this time her tone was different. Cold, distant. "Jessica, don't come this year," she said very clearly. Froze. "What do you mean?" "We talked, Nathan, his girlfriend, your aunt too. Everyone feels like you bring the mood down." I swallowed hard. "Why?" "Because you always make people feel like they owe you. You don't know how to be gentle. We just want a cheerful Christmas." I hung up without saying anything else. No tears. No anger. I simply opened my phone, logged into my banking app, and stopped the next mortgage payment. I didn't sleep that night. After that phone call, I didn't cry. I wasn't angry, but something inside me felt broken. I started thinking back on everything I had done for them. Not for praise. Just because I thought it was what a daughter should do. When Dad passed, when Mom was falling apart, and when my little brother couldn't handle life on his own. I remembered that first night after Dad's funeral. Mom sat on the couch, pale as a ghost, and Nathan had locked himself in his room all day. I was the one who handled the death certificate, canceled the credit cards, and sorted out the looming bank loan. No one offered to help. I didn't complain. I didn't ask for anything. It was my family. I took on the responsibility. That house, the one I grew up in, the one I thought I'd always be welcome in, was on the verge of foreclosure because the old mortgage under Dad's name was up for renewal. Mom didn't have the income to qualify, and Nathan was unemployed. I decided to take out the new mortgage under my name. And not just that. I ended up paying nearly the entire monthly amount. At first, Mom said she would help out when she could. But then, she never brought it up again. The first 3 months I didn't mind. 6 months in, I started to feel tired. But every time I tried to bring up money, Mom would deflect. "I'm already being careful with spending, Jessica. Don't pressure me more." So I stopped mentioning it. I began adjusting my own budget. I gave up the summer trip to Colorado with my best friend. I cut back on spa days after work. I wasn't living poorly, but I was always calculating. And them. Mom posted brunch photos every weekend with her retiree friends. Nathan got a new laptop, bought a gaming chair, and bragged about his girlfriend, trying out living with the family just for fun. I saw it all. On Facebook. On Instagram. But I stayed silent. The one time I tried speaking up to Nathan, he shrugged. "You act like you're some kind of savior or something." Froze. I wasn't asking to be praised. I just wanted to be respected. But the more I gave, the more invisible I became to them. I remembered one evening last fall, during a heavy rainstorm. My car broke down on the way to Mom's house. I texted to say I'd be late, hoping someone might come help push the car. No one replied. When I finally arrived, soaked to the bone, Mom just said, "Why didn't you call AAA?" I gave a half smile and went to dry off in my old bathroom, which Nathan had since remodeled into a sneaker storage room. That was the moment I thought, I don't belong here anymore. But I still kept paying the mortgage. Out of habit. Like it was the last thread connecting me to them. And now, they've collectively crossed my name off the Christmas gathering. The one event I always tried to hold on to, even when everything else had fallen apart. They had a meeting. They agreed. They wanted a Christmas without me. And what about me? I had no reason left to keep holding on to them. I pulled up the mortgage account and looked at the payment history. I had paid over $138,000 for that house in the past 4 years. I had poured my time, youth, and emotions into keeping them safe and secure. And now, they wanted me to disappear as if I never existed. Fine then. I'll give them exactly what they want. I started to realize that the relationship between me and my family wasn't just cold. It had been rotting from the inside out, eaten away by jealousy, insecurity, and even quiet resentment. I didn't see it sooner because I kept making excuses for their behavior. I told myself Mom was just tired, aging, still grieving after Dad's death. I thought Nathan was just immature, that he needed more time. But the truth had been there all along. I just didn't want to face it. One time, I dropped by the house to bring over some loan documents for Mom to sign. I happened to overhear a conversation between her and Nathan in the kitchen. They didn't know I was there. Nathan said, his voice tense and irritated, "I'm sick of living in her shadow, Mom. It's always Jessica this, Jessica that. She got the scholarship, she works in an office, she has money. So let her take care of everything, right?" Mom didn't disagree. She just sighed and said, "You're not wrong. I honestly don't know when you'll ever get as stable as her." I stood behind the door, frozen. What I felt wasn't shock, it was pain. Not because what they said about me was untrue, but because, to them, everything I did was just a reminder of what they didn't have. I helped so they wouldn't have to struggle, but they saw it as me showing off. Since Dad passed, I'd never bragged about anything. I never mentioned my promotions or the $1 million contract my company signed. I just quietly did my work, sent the money on time, and occasionally dropped by with a bag of cookies or a cheap bottle of wine for dinner. And yet, in their eyes, I was the outsider, the successful but distant one, the person who made them feel ashamed of themselves. I still remember one of the few times I went with them to an extended family gathering. Aunt Carol looked at me and said, "Jessica's really accomplished, but she feels kind of hard to approach. Like she's on another level." I didn't respond. But that comment stuck with me for days. I had made the effort to come, dressed simply, smiled politely, and it still wasn't enough to make them feel like I belonged. It wasn't that I acted different. It was that they needed me to be different. It justified why they didn't like me. When I gave Mom a new iPad for her birthday, Nathan frowned and said, "Are you trying to turn Mom into a robot or something?" Mom hesitated. "Next time don't get me something so expensive. I'm not used to it." I knew very well that within a week, she was using it to play games and FaceTime her friends. I don't blame her. But I began to understand that every gift I gave became a reminder that I could offer them things they couldn't give back. And over time, that turned into a quiet bitterness they never spoke of, just showed through cold looks, passive comments, and finally a family meeting where they decided I wasn't welcome for Christmas. Once, I suggested that Nathan go back to school or learn a trade to get a more stable job. He jumped up from the couch and pointed at me. "You're not my mom. Stop trying to control everyone. Before I could say anything, Mom cut in. He's just under pressure, honey. Don't push him. Got the message. What she meant was, don't make him feel worse, even if the truth is, he's living off someone else's sacrifice. When did telling the truth become pushing too hard? When did trying to help my brother become a crime? The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. The gap between me and them wasn't about money or time, it was about mindset. I tried to help, they saw it as control. I tried to stay connected, they saw it as interference. I stayed quiet and gave. They saw it as arrogance. And now it's clear. They don't want me at Christmas because, in their eyes, I was never truly part of this family. I was just the one holding the keys to the house, while they were the ones who decided who got to walk through the door. I thought the pain from that early December phone call was already enough. I thought that when I decided to stop paying the mortgage, I had fully ended every tie. But then Mom called again, just 3 days after Christmas. The call came while I was sitting alone in my small apartment, the lights from the lone Christmas tree reflecting on the hardwood floor. I had mentally prepared for a quiet holiday. No family, no obligations, just me and the silence. When the screen lit up with Mom calling, I almost didn't answer. But after a few seconds of hesitation, I tapped the accept button, not knowing if it was out of habit, hope, or simply because I still hadn't learned how to be a stranger to my own mother. Her voice came through, quiet and clipped. Jessica, I got a letter from the bank. I knew immediately what she was referring to. She paused, then continued. They said the mortgage wasn't paid this month. They'll send a warning if this keeps happening. Did you make a mistake or something? I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. Not because I was tired, but because I knew I was about to step into a conversation I'd avoided for years, the one about the truth. No, Mom, I said calmly. I stopped paying at the beginning of the month. Silence on the other end. A long silence, so long I thought she had hung up. Finally she spoke again, this time sharper, her voice rising. Are you trying to scare me? No, Mom. I just stopped doing what I've done for 4 years. Paying for a house I'm not welcome in. Another pause. Jessica, she said slowly. That's my house. Our house. I let out a quiet, bitter laugh. No, Mom. It's in my name. And you know that. I took out the loan, I paid nearly all of it. I didn't do it for the title, I did it for family. But if the family no longer considers me part of it, then I have no obligation to continue. Her voice started to shake. You're mad about Christmas. Is that what this is about? This time it was my turn to go quiet. Not because I didn't have an answer, but because I was holding back everything I wanted to say. Well, it wasn't just Christmas. It was every cruel comment, every silence in the face of my efforts, every cold look, every passive-aggressive remark. Every year I paid that mortgage without anyone asking how I was doing, if I was tired, or if I was lonely. And finally that family vote to exclude me, like I had never belonged in the first place. I took a deep breath. It's not just about Christmas, Mom. It's because I finally understood my place in this family. I'm the one who made it possible for them to live comfortably, but I was never truly one of them. Mom began to cry. I couldn't remember the last time she cried in front of me. Maybe when Dad passed. Maybe never. Jessica. Sorry. I didn't think you'd actually do this. I thought you'd understand. I do understand, Mom, I said. All too well. We're going to lose the house, she sobbed. Nathan and I have nowhere else to go. I don't know what to do. I didn't want to hear those words. Not because I was cold, but because I knew all too well what it felt like to not know what to do, while everyone else just looked the other way. I softened my voice but stayed firm. You can call the bank. They'll give you options. Maybe a refinance if you have a co-signer. If not, then you and Nathan will have to figure things out. The same way I did when I was 18. I heard sniffles on the other end. Then Mom said, barely audible. So, you're really cutting us off? I looked up at the ceiling, my eyes stinging. No, Mom, I said. I'm just done being used. I hung up after that call. No goodbye. No promises. Just a long, hollow beep echoing into silence, as cold and final as the relationship between my mother and me, now unplugged. I didn't cry. I didn't feel the relief people often describe after making a big decision. I just felt empty. Not because I had done something cruel, but because I had finally admitted that I could no longer be the pillar holding up a house I wasn't even allowed to enter. The next day I called the bank. "Hello, Ms. Jessica Clark. We noticed the mortgage payment for this month was missed. Is there anything we can assist you with?" I took a deep breath. "I'm calling to officially inform you that I will no longer be making payments on this loan," I said. There was a brief pause on the other end. The account manager seemed slightly surprised but kept a professional tone. "Would you like to sell the property, or allow the bank to proceed with foreclosure?" "I'll let the bank handle it through standard foreclosure procedures," I replied plainly. After a few seconds, she confirmed the details and sent me an email with the official acknowledgement of voluntary default. Everything was formal, clear, no turning back. I stared at the words in the email. Voluntary default notice. Effective immediately. I didn't feel regret. I just felt free. I knew what would come next. The bank would send a notice to the current residents, my mom and Nathan. They'd be given time to negotiate, refinance if they qualified, or vacate the property before formal foreclosure proceedings began. I knew Mom couldn't qualify for a loan on her own. And I knew Nathan would never even consider taking responsibility. I had given them 4 years. Now I was giving them one last chance to take care of themselves. In the week that followed, I didn't call. I didn't answer any of the incoming calls either, even though my phone rang constantly. Every number was familiar, and each time I just let the screen go dark. I didn't want to hear any more blame. I didn't want to listen to excuses, or worse, pleas that would quickly turn back into contempt once things settled. I needed to break that cycle of toxic emotion, once and for all. I cleaned my apartment. I started reorganizing paperwork, updated some of my bank accounts, canceled the secondary card I had once opened for Mom. I called the insurance company to remove the property from my personal coverage. Small steps, but each one was a cord being cut. That Friday afternoon, I received an email from the bank confirming that the foreclosure notice had been delivered to the house. They included the date of the initial property inspection, January 28th. They also clearly stated, if no new financing arrangement was made within 60 days, the foreclosure process would officially begin. I closed my eyes picturing that house. The place where I spent my first Christmas as a 5-year-old. Where I hid in my room crying when my parents fought. Where I studied for college entrance exams on the old wooden desk in my upstairs bedroom. Part of me still felt attached. But the rest had rotted away long ago. I didn't know what Mom and Nathan would do. Maybe they'd find a lawyer. Maybe they'd beg relatives for help. Maybe they'd leave quietly. I didn't need to know. Because finally, I was no longer the one carrying their burden. I used to believe, family is where you return. But some houses, no matter how much you give to them, will only ever be temporary shelters for people who never truly wanted you there in the first place. I thought they'd react right after receiving the warning letter from the bank. And I was right. On the afternoon of January 30th, my phone rang non-stop. Mom, Nathan, even Aunt Carol. None of them called on Christmas. Not a single message throughout January. But now, suddenly, they were all reaching out, as if I had just triggered a bomb they never truly believed would go off. I didn't answer. I had already said everything I needed to say. Now it was their turn to take responsibility. But the next morning I woke up to over 20 messages. One of them was a voice recording from my mom, nearly a minute long. I wasn't planning to listen, but press play anyway. Her voice cracked. "Jessica. Sorry. I didn't know it would come to this. I thought you were just upset. I didn't think you'd actually stop. This house. It's all I have left. It's where your father's memories live. It's where you grew up. Could you, please help us again? I stopped the recording before it ended. I couldn't keep listening. Because her voice sounded too much like the way she used to plead with my dad, back when he decided to sell the car to pay off debt. That same familiar desperation from someone who had grown used to leaning on others. That afternoon, Nathan sent me the longest message he'd ever written. "Hey sis, I know I'm not the best. But I didn't think you'd throw us out like this. I'm trying to find a job, I really am. And Mom, she's not well. If the bank takes the house, it'll break her. Isn't this a bit harsh?" I read every word. Not a single admission of fault. No real apology. Just their fear of loss. As if I were some heartless villain taking away something they believed rightfully theirs. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't feel anything. But because I finally understood. Any explanation I gave would be twisted into control, blame, or guilt. I had tried listening. I had silently sacrificed. And all I got in return was rejection. A week later, Aunt Carol showed up at my office. I was completely caught off guard when I saw her waiting in the lobby. Her coat still dusted with snow. She walked up, no greeting, no small talk, and asked, "Are you really going to let them lose the house?" I invited her to a small cafe nearby. Sitting across from her, I felt like I was on trial, but this time I didn't carry the guilt I used to. "Aunt Carol," I began, "I covered that house for 4 years. No one ever asked what I needed. No one knew what I gave up. I was pushed out of the family, accused of being overbearing, cut out of Christmas." Her expression softened. After a long pause, she said quietly, "You don't owe them anything. But your mother's truly panicking. She's called the whole family, saying you're getting revenge." I let out a soft laugh. Not out of humor but exhaustion. "It's not revenge," I said. "I just stopped." On February 12th, I got an email from the bank. Mom and Nathan didn't qualify for refinancing. Their application was denied due to lack of stable income and poor credit history. The house officially entered pre-foreclosure. In 60 days, they'd either have to leave or be forced out. I knew they were scrambling. Maybe selling furniture, begging relatives, or trying to move in with someone. But I stayed out of it. Not because I didn't care, but because I was drained. That night, I stood on the balcony of my apartment, staring out at the city. Streetlights shimmered, a light layer of snow blanketed the rooftops below. Peaceful, distant. I thought about this past Christmas. The first one I'd spent alone. No big tree, no chaos, no criticism. And for the first time, felt safe. I didn't go back to the old house on the day they were evicted. I received an email from the bank confirming that the residents hadn't responded to the request to vacate before the deadline. That morning, the legal unit, along with the police, came to carry out the property seizure under court order. I didn't go. I didn't need to watch my mother and Nathan move out of a place they once called home, but never truly saw me as part of. I just sat in a coffee shop near my office, hands wrapped around a latte, eyes looking out at the rainy street. Not happy, not sad, just light. 4 years of silence, pressure, and burden, finally lifted. And I realized that sometimes, letting go isn't failure. It's a way to save yourself. 2 weeks later, I received a handwritten letter. It had been a long time since I'd seen my mother's handwriting. Slanted, stiff, and shaky. "Jessica, there's nothing I can say except I'm sorry. I know you don't trust me anymore. But I'm writing this because I want you to know I was wrong. I was wrong to think you'd always be there no matter how I treated you. Wrong to let Nathan manipulate everything and call it, because he's still young. And wrong to make you feel like a stranger in the very home you work so hard to save. I don't expect your forgiveness. I just want you to know, you deserve to be loved. And I lost sight of that. I'm staying temporarily at Aunt Carol's. Every day that passes, I realize all the things you did that I never appreciated. Sorry, Mom." I read the letter a third time before I noticed my hands trembling. Not from anger, but from pain. The apology came late. But at least, it was real. I folded the letter and tucked it into my drawer. No reply. No response. I wasn't ready. And I didn't owe anyone a reunion. From that point on, I started over. I bought a small apartment. Not big, but mine. I left behind the mortgage, the old house, and all the memories tied to it. I started spending on myself. Weekend trips, art classes, Friday night theater. Smiled more. I walked with my head held high, no longer feeling the need to prove anything. For the first time in my life, I was living for myself. I don't know where Nathan is now. Last I heard, he was working part-time at an electronics store near the suburbs. Aunt Carol said he'd started paying off a small debt, and for the first time in his life, had his name on a lease. As for Mom, she's still with Aunt Carol. They say she's calmed down, no longer quick to blame. She posts less on social media. No more flashy brunch photos or floor-to-ceiling Christmas trees. None of them ever called me again. And I think that's for the best. The following Christmas, I went skiing with a group of friends in Colorado. On the night of the 24th, we sat around the fireplace, laughing, sharing silly high school stories. No one talked about family or pain or duty. Just kind people, sharing time, warmth, and presence. I didn't have to pay to be accepted. Didn't have to sacrifice to be loved. And didn't have to beg to be invited to the table. I had a place. Not in some worn-out house, but in my own life. My story doesn't have a fairy tale ending. There was no reunion. They didn't completely change. And I didn't become some hero. But I learned the most important lesson. No one has the right to take your dignity and peace. Not even if they're called family. Thank you for listening to my story. I'm Jessica Clark. And for the first time in my life, chose my own family. Jessica's story is a painful yet profound journey of sacrifice, awakening, and the importance of self-preservation. From a quiet daughter who carried the weight of her entire family, she was dismissed, pushed aside, and ultimately forced to let go. Though she didn't choose revenge, she allowed them to face the consequences of their ingratitude. The story leaves listeners with a sense of unease and empathy, reminding us that sometimes walking away isn't selfish. It's the bravest thing we can do for ourselves. What do you think about Jessica's story? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to follow the channel so you won't miss any more real-life stories full of emotion and meaningful lessons about family, relationships, and the power of choice.